Can you please say something? No.
No.
Because
Is your...
this is it. So you put the
Yeah, but it comes from here.
Yeah, but we can put this here, no?
Let's see.
Or I can...
I'm afraid it can. Try it now.
Okay.
Javier?
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
You will have to speak up a bit. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll try to do so, no problem.
Okay, everyone, thanks for coming back after this very nice voting session. I will introduce my colleague Lennert. He will take over the panel discussion regarding, well, in reality, you all know this topic very, very well. It's all about data. So let's discuss a bit about data opportunities and barriers in the context of European funded projects. I think there are a lot of people here with vast experience in that. Lennert will moderate and manage the whole panel. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, I'm Lennert, and we'll start with a Slido to get a bit into the topic. So if possible, if you can scan the QR code, then you can help us to vote to the big question: what is the biggest problem or obstacle with collecting data? Multiple options to make it a bit simpler. At first, there is a specification of the necessary data or available data. So this is the question of which data, how it should look like, for how long, sample rate, unit, resolution, and so on. Another thing is social issues. The social issues, it's more about the permission to capture the data, persuading people to provide data. The legal part is GDPR, NDAs, regulation. And then the technical part is also a common thing, is more of how to get the data and to log it, then transfer it, store it, the data cleaning, managing the missing data, analyze the data, making a data lake, making it available. So many things for creating the data, managing the data, and to collect data. Many problems. Okay, very interesting. Already a very clear clear problem we have, that the technical part is still the most difficult. It's also a very broad subject, of course, the technical one. But with this knowledge, we go to Javier, Head of Energy, Climate and Decarbonization Unit at Atos, and he'll talk about multiple projects and his experience with data. Maybe easiest to go this way.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear me properly now. I'll try to speak up. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting event, and sorry not being able to be there, but it is good that we somehow found this workaround so I can be also participating, because this is my field of expertise, let's say. So hopefully we can brainstorm together about how is the best way to approach data collection and so on. Just for starters, and I don't want to be very extensive on this initial approach, I just wanted to provide you with my vision on this. Starting, for instance, with the question we already answered to, there are a lot of obstacles for data collection. We can cluster them as we did for the question. There are some obstacles that are related to legal problems, such as regulation, such as GDPR, also intellectual property. So those things we somehow need to find a workaround with lawyers and experts on that. So that's something we usually need support, the ones that are here, I guess. And then there are other things that are purely technical barriers, which are this need for harmonization of heterogeneous data that are not usually easy to cluster. Then we have this vendor lock-in effect, in which we might find some parts of the data value chains that are black boxes, and therefore we cannot see what is happening in there. Then the part purely on cybersecurity, privacy, and trust, whenever we are gathering data, knowing how to store it, how to persist it, and do it also in alignment with these legal issues we were discussing earlier. And something which is more pragmatic, but it is also happening, especially for us in this kind of projects, which is over or underestimation of the data that we were going to collect. Both things are harmful. If we overestimate what we had, then we will find along the way problems, because we might have planned for doing some kind of analytics or service over this data that can no longer be done, and the other way around. If we are having more data than expected, maybe we are also undersizing our IT systems to store it and properly manage it. But even though we have these problems, I think we also acknowledge that data is paramount for the projects that we are doing, especially projects that are involving digital solutions. Why is it so crucial? Because we need quality data for advanced digital services. And this is not just limited to a lot of real data gathering, it is also pertinent to historical data. We need a lot of data from previous measurements in order to train our models, train our algorithms, and make accurate simulations, predictions, or operations over the data. And we need it, as we were discussing, to be harmonized, because if we want to be interoperable, if we want to produce services that are somehow scalable, replicable, and so on, we need to work on harmonized data. And this is also something we are extensively looking at. We have to do it in a sectorial way, because we won't cluster the data in energy projects as we will cluster it in other domains, but still we need to come up with this common vocabulary for everybody to operate over the same data. And also we are usually talking about data and just limit to raw data, the data that we are able to collect on field, but data is also as well what we get in return from analytic services. So we have to also make sure that we persist and we disseminate and we use the data that is going to be output from our digital services. So this is also very important. So what can we do to ease data collection? Being pragmatic and also trying to do it from the perspective of research projects. So we need to carefully plan directly at project start, if not done directly at proposal stage. What are we going to do? The plan for data collection, and try to move deadlines as forward as possible, so that we can have this data from the very beginning. And try to be realistic, as we were saying. It is equally harmful to under or overestimate the data that we are going to be able to have in the project. For the harmonization process, it is very important to work on metadata. For each data set that we are going to collect, we need to make this effort of trying to accurately also define metadata, because it will enhance discoverability, interoperability, and so on. And very important as well, work side by side with data owners, data producers, data users, so we can understand everybody's necessities and also draft this plan from the very beginning, in which we are coordinating and making it happen properly and timely. And last but not least, also food for thoughts, and also maybe for potential discussion later on the panel. How can we make sure that our digital solutions are prepared for this interoperability, for this data gathering, and for the future? Well, first of all, we need to work with as much as possible with open source and open standards. I know we have to do business, and that's especially applicable to large companies as Atos, but we need to make sure that we do this business with what makes sense or what produce outcomes for the company, but also working with open source to foster this interoperability and replicability. We need to as well early agree on this harmonization and this data plan. And as for the future, let's say, there is a lot of innovation and a lot of research traction towards data spaces. So it seems that the future will spin around, at least from these digital solutions for data sharing, about what they are proposing, which is basically federation of data platforms into something which is distributed, providing this distributed identity provision, so everybody who wants to join a given data space would be able to do so without the need of any intermediary, indexing data so that we can share it without losing sovereignty and also increasing the level of trust, using smart contracts to ruling who and under which conditions will access our data if we are data owners, and also providing this open environment with where both data owners and data users can thrive and also can feel comfortable with sharing data. And that's everything I wanted to say, at least for starters. Hopefully it was not too dense or too much, especially as I didn't have supportive material. And thank you very much again, and happy to discuss in the next minutes.
Thank you, Javier. We'll now go on with the panel. The panel from left to right starts with Gemira Martinez, Project Management Officer at Enedis, and she'll talk about project iElectrix. Then we'll have Alfonso Bernad Montenegro, Project Manager at CIRCE, and he'll talk about Interpreter. And next to him, we have Arnor van Leempunten, R&D Engineer at Think-E, and he'll talk about Interconnect and MuseGrids. Then there is Shary Heuninckx from researchers at VUB, and talking about Renaissance and also about specific energetic. And then we have Christof de Knop, Managing Director of Smart Buildings at IMTech, and he'll talk about project creators. We're going to describe the project a bit, and then the link to data collection.
So thank you for the invitation, first of all. So I work for this project, which is called iElectrix. So unlikely Javier, I'm no expert data, but I can tell you a little bit about the barriers technically that we face for the demonstrators we had in this project. We had 5 demonstrations of smart grids. So we had 4 in Europe, in Hungary, in Austria, and in Germany. And this was data that for the data was easier, but we had also a smart grid in Delhi, in India, in a urban environment with a market totally different and with consumers that are totally different from Europe and with an awareness that it's completely different. So about the data. The first thing is that, okay, everybody said here, data is super important for these new energy systems that we had. We had this in our project, and data has become more important, or at least as important as the cables and the wires we need for the energy to function today. So in our case was, first of all, if I speak on the technical aspect of the demonstrations, was the cybersecurity. And as we all know, of course, we need to ensure that all these smart devices that we need to collect and to transfer data in the smart grid are secure. But on the other hand, what we had as a problem is that once you are super secure, these systems need to interoperate. Your software from your battery to a store needs to interoperate with your energy management systems. And the example we had, for example, with the smart grid in India, is that at a moment the firewall of one system didn't want it to let to interoperate with the software of the other. So this, you have a limitation there. So you need the cybersecurity, but on the other hand, you need the system to be as interoperable to allow the system to function. So this was a quite challenging thing in India and the other on the other demonstrations. And the other thing I will say is mostly in the lack of data, like historical data. We speak a little bit about it. In Europe was difficult, but in India was more complex because in the low voltage systems we were installing the smart grid, we didn't have the historical data because there were not devices measuring this before. So we needed to take some time to put a sensor there in the low voltage grid to measure this in order to reconstruct something that will be useful for the systems to learn the behavior of the low voltage system. So I will join also Javier in a sense that there is no we don't need to underestimate neither the time that we need to take to define which is the data, how we're going to collect it, and how these devices are going to collect the data, are going to interoperate between them. So if you are in projects like this, take the time to make interoperation tests and before the real demo, because it can be really messy on site after. Yeah, so I don't know if you have some other questions or...
We'll maybe do the questions afterwards.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Gemira.
So I will join Gemira and Javier. Thanks for the invitation for this event. My name is Alfonso Bernad. I'm project manager at CIRCE, and I will explain briefly the experience that we have in Interpreter project. Basically, Interpreter was a project from Horizon 2020 that ended the last September. The core of this project was not the energy communities, was low voltage distribution grids. So we aim to develop 10 tools, interoperable tools. 5 of them goes to operation and maintenance, and the other 5 goes to planning for these grids. So we need for these tools data, and we need grid models. And regarding the grid models, there we face another problem, because we also have a specific tool that allows us to create those grid models. So we have data for creating grid models and data for operating our tools. I have to say that we were quite lucky, because since the very beginning, for the data creation or for the grid model creation, we detect like 3 different scenarios for low voltage distribution: low data availability, medium, and high. It is true that currently, and now even more, the grids become more and more digitalized, but this is not something that all the grids has. So you cannot expect that the solution that you are developing for, let's say, a fully or a high data scenario is going to be worthy or is going to be helpful for a low data. So in this sense, we were lucky because we were able to create the common frame, that's called in this sense. So detecting if we have low data, we are able to create a grid model that also is able to work in these tools. But at some point, we have to be clear that without the data, and this goes directly linked with Javier, without the raw data, the solution that we can present is not going to be as detailed and as good as possible. And for us, the data was also important for the validation. So as I said, we have data for creating grid models, and we have data for operating the tools. So we develop, as an example, self-healing tools. We develop also some tools regarding flexibility. We found that even though we were asking for different projects, different cooperators, looking for aggregators data in order to test it with our solutions, there is not a huge amount of aggregators in Europe that are able to provide you the information. And moreover, even though you present them a clear non-disclosure agreement, that didn't give you the chance sometimes to obtain the data. You have to prepare clearly why you need the data and what they are going to receive for getting you the data. And this sometimes is something that we are missing, at least in research project. We want to have the data, but we need to present clearly what are we going to do with that data and how this solution is going to be helpful for you as aggregator, as a distribution network, and so on. So this is basically my perspective. But if there is more questions.
Okay, thank you. Also very happy to be here. I want to share my experiences from 2 projects, actually, from MuseGrids and from Interconnect. MuseGrids is a project built around 2 demonstration sites, one in Italy, one in Belgium. For MuseGrids, we were, as Tinky, actually involved with the hands-on data collection of one of those 2 sites. Christof was also involved actually there, where we actually went into the homes of the people, installed several smart devices, but also data collection devices. And yeah, when we undoubtedly come back to the question later on, but the technical issues there, yeah, there are numerous, but also social issues, especially in sites. If you have to go into the homes of people, the first time it's okay, second time they're complaining, starting from the third time, if you have to do it 6 or 7 times, especially sometimes the connection falls out, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a time-consuming and human resource-intensive process, and also yeah, technical issues. If the Wi-Fi drops out, if the backup is full, so all these kind of things we notice there. From Interconnect, we have a slightly different role there. Interconnect is a very ambitious project. I think it's the biggest Horizon 2020 project from DGNR. It's worth 36 million. And it's a very complicated project, but the idea of Interconnect is focused around interoperability of energy management systems. And the idea there is, okay, we have all these different devices. In a perfect world, all our devices can talk to each other. But of course, yeah, these devices speak different languages, just as humans can speak different languages. We can speak French and English, but devices can also speak different protocols. And to solve this, Interconnect is trying to move towards the concept of semantic interoperability. What does it mean? In a very, very nutshell explanation is, in different languages, if we say the same word, we have to mean the same things. And in languages like French and English, it's usually the case, but if you go towards protocols, if you go towards ICT communication, that's usually not the case. So building on this kind of, it's not a dictionary, it's an ontology, a list of concepts, and then you can send information to whatever language you want, whatever protocol you want, but we are sure that we mean the same thing. And so there are, of course, a lot of interesting insights from that side as well. But I'm sure we'll have the chance to touch upon it later.
Yeah, hello. I was in charge of the energetic project, which is a sub-project of Renaissance that involves awareness building of energy consumption among students. We wanted to test out some activities and see if it has an influence on the consumption behavior of students on campus. Now, to be able to see whether the actions that you introduce have an effect, you of course need measurement data. So I knocked on the door of the building manager at our campus. And my first surprise was that apparently some measurement devices were installed, but they were not used. And they were not on a room level, not even on a building level, but on a campus level. So actually no one had a real insight in what was being consumed in individual rooms or even buildings. So we tried to install all the measurement devices that we needed, but the second surprise for me, as I'm not really into this sector, was that it took a long time. There was a lot of hurdles to overcome to decide which measurement devices we needed, where they had to be installed, because no one had the plans of the electricity, the old electricity lines within the building, so it took us a long time. I had the exact same experience with data gathering for another energy community project in the neighborhood with some companies. It seemed simple. Okay, we gather the data, the consumption data of all these companies. But in practice, it took so much time and effort and hurdles to overcome to actually get this data, get new meters installed, etc. And when I heard around, it was something that was encountered in all similar projects. I talked to Maria. She said, oh, I've seen the same thing in the project that I'm involved in. So let's do our own research. And that's why we decided to do some interviews with different pilot site managers to see what were the specific hurdles that they didn't expect but needed to overcome to actually get the data. I will not get into the results yet. I will not spoil it, but it was quite interesting.
So my name is Christof Knop, project coordinator for creators. We experience actually the same problems as the other ones in data collection. The problem there is interoperability, standardization. For this, we set up a multi-layered communication protocol where we start connecting the assets to actually a PLC programmable. Sorry. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, big difference. So what we did there is setting up a multi-layer communication protocol and try to set up some kind of standardization ourselves. Next step there is it's not only collection but also control. So also there you have to see how are you going to handle this, because we all know our services or network changes, it's not up and running 100% of the time. So there we looked also for some kind of redundant system, having a local rule-based control, which is suboptimal. And afterwards, when connection is up and running, it's a model predictive control. Then, as a last thing, what we also experience is for social part, is visualization. People have different expectations. One person is more interested in seeing how green he is, and then also the revenues on this one, where the other one wants to see cost reduction. And also this have to stay flexible to modify it depending the requests of your end clients and end users. So this is
Okay, thank you. I hear the different problems pass by with everyone. Not only technical is a big problem, is a big difficulty, but the other ones as well. If I hear the social part, you have to re-enter and re-enter with the people. That's also a bit linked, maybe partly to the technical part, that it's not working that efficient. And I also hear that Interconnect is a big solution, maybe, hopefully, and will help in the technical parts. But what's the answer? How to solve this? What to add in the work package? Is it a thing of time, or should we have the data already before we even make the proposition of the project?
I'll try to provide an answer there. I think, speaking of the different problems we have in data collection, if you have data sets already available when writing the proposal and before the start of the project, of course this is an added value. And I do think that in the future, data availability before starting it will be a very high factor. If you have two projects, one still has to gain the data, one already has the data, the one will get the grants, of course, the project who already has this data available. On the other hand, spending enough time, like Javier already said, to accurately collect this data and update the legacy data that you have is already also very important. And I think the more we do it, the more experience we have, the better we get at collecting this data. So, for example, we have MuseGrids is actually a second project, and we first had in the same neighborhood we had Story, and our first energy measurement devices didn't have this kind of buffer for when the Wi-Fi dropped out. So we had a lot of time that we simply, or a few hours where we didn't have this solution. The next iteration, we made an updated device that could buffer data locally and then send it all together in the end. And so, I think it definitely will be important to have this data up front, but we cannot underestimate the power of also writing in our proposals, writing in our projects, sufficient time to collect data and update data.
Okay.
Yeah, same. And I think also to add, maybe share our experiences more, because everyone seems to encounter the same problems and is surprised by these problems, but then when you talk to each other, I had the same thing. So when we're more aware of what these barriers and these problems can be, and we take them into account and we count enough time in the project proposals indeed to overcome them, it's less of a problem, I think.
Thank you. I see that Javier also wants to add.
Yes, thank you. So maybe also to complement this need for early identification, another thing I wanted to stress out is that rarely in these kind of projects we will find in the future funds from the European Commission to gather data, let's say. So they are assuming that we have it. And especially for innovation actions, they are assuming that we have the connected devices and we are receiving this data. So it will be more and more important directly at proposal side. We are starting to do so to clearly identify the data that is going to be used in the project. So it would be paramount to have it in advance, to know it in advance, and to prepare directly at proposal side with what we can do with this data and what are the things that we will be doing with this data. So even though we might find these kind of situations in which we will have to install and we will have to prepare, we need to shift, let's say, our mindset and start working in this from the very beginning.
Okay, thank you. Any question from the audience?
Do you have examples where participants could solve problems themselves with the data collection?
So you mean, for example, in the households that the participants themselves could have insight in their data, and yeah, for example, indeed, what we also did was provide each of our participants a visualization board. And so they could see when there was a lack in their own data, and we noticed some of the participants were really involved and really conscious about their energy and the ecology. Yeah, then we sometimes got a mail or sometimes got a phone call saying, hey, my data is not working anymore. But if you have 36 houses, it's like one that does this. So it's really, yeah, a lot of the times also in these projects, it's the residents. You have different profiles, like we've said this morning as well, and not all of them, or most of them, are not on a daily basis concerned with your device that you have installed there. So a lot is about automation, is about, okay, if the data is not being collected, sending an automated message to your platform. That's not that difficult, but the difficult part is scheduling an appointment to go and fix it. There are some cybersecurity concerns if you have like remote access to your devices. That's always easier, but not always possible if there is a hardware problem, for example. So providing visualization to your residents or to your participants can be an option, but it depends highly on their engagement, on their intrinsic motivation.
Okay, thank you. Maybe other projects.
At least from my experience and my, let's say, customers or the ones that give me the data are DSOs, they have the capacity to gather the data. But it is true that sometimes the developers, the ones that are going to use the data, has to go after them, because for them that data is not a daily use in some situations. So you have to remind them, but they have the capacity to solve the problem.
There's another
Thank
question. Luis?
Question from the research community. Any thoughts from all the projects of making all this data anonymized and available for everyone else? At least the historical one?
Yeah, I can try. It's a difficult question to answer it. We open a whole lot of discussions if we go too deep into it, because I mean, especially if you notice the difficulty we have in projects, difficult companies having collecting this data is valuable. So I don't think it's as straightforward to simply say all the data we collect in European projects should be open. On the other hand, yeah, there is something to say for the research community, and we will help each other a lot more if we put all our data open and available to others. So I'm not sure there is a straight answer to it, but from business perspective, I think, yeah, collecting this data is time intensive and there is value in it, and you should be able to also get something back for it.
May I reply?
Short. Yeah.
I'm one of the hungry ones. So no, but it's very interesting because on the other side, all this data collection was financed through European money, with the objective of having, well, they have their own policy on open access data. So I hope that last argument from your side was not really recorded, because it actually is against the spirit of all the funding that the European Commission is providing.
I'll go for a short reply from Javier, maybe.
Okay, so I will try to answer both things. Yes, I agree that we should go towards open data as much as possible, and it is true that partially the European Commission is funding this, but we are mixing a lot of things with data. We are, as you were saying, we need to anonymize it. We need to make sure it is not also linked to any business critical solutions from a given data user or whatever. So it's tricky to provide it. Ideally, it would be that way. And maybe a trade-off solution is what we are trying to investigate now on data spaces, making it available, but not making it free. And we are finalizing this round of projects, let's say, in which we were trying to develop something specifically oriented to a given problem, in this case, energy communities or optimizing digital grids. And now we are starting with this new round of projects that are looking directly on data sharing. And maybe with those projects, we will find solutions to make this data available. For sure, it should be anonymized, because the principle for data sharing in data spaces is that we will be using non-personal data, but we will make it available for whoever is interested, provided that there are certain conditions that are met. If somebody is willing to provide this data and receive some monetization as a counterpart, we should respect it, but maybe some other actors might provide this data in exchange for other data, in exchange for services, or maybe as well just publishing it as open data. But I think the next phase in terms of data sharing, we are starting it now with data spaces, and it looks promising. Let's see if we can meet the expectations at the end.
Okay, thank you all. I think that was still one question.
Yeah, I have a comment on the comment on the comment of the comment. So yes, Luis, you're right. The data in projects is funded by the Commission and should be shared. However, if you want to share data and have open data for a larger community, we go a lot beyond that. We just not projects, it's a lot more. And I think we need to see what is the value in those data. And indeed, as you say, Javier, somebody needs to maintain it, explore it, and buy it and sell it. So I think it's important we look at that aspect as well. I just have an open question. I don't know if you have an idea, but we all say there is value in data. I have no idea how much value there is and if you can actually make out a business out of it. Maybe we should talk to the banking sector or the commercial sector. They probably would know more, unless somebody here in the audience knows about this.
Okay. Well, maybe a small comment related to that. I think a lot of the hesitance in sharing data or making data open data is related to the privacy protection, etc. And when we did a research and we asked, like, how difficult was it to get people to sign NDAs and hand over their data, we almost always got the answer, it was quite simple. Actually, once they knew what the data was going to be used for, they just wanted to hand it out, and it was from the moment we brought the NDA, or actually a contract, that they started to get suspicious and think, ooh, I don't understand what's written here, maybe there is some value in it. And then people and companies were starting to get more hesitant. But at first instance, people and even companies are very willing to share their data for something that is for the public good or for their own good. And it's not as big as an issue as it seems to be, well, at least on the terrain, but in the discussion and in the debate, it's always about privacy protection, and it's not that big of an issue, it seemed, with the cases we saw.
Yeah, if I can go next. Talking from the experience of dealing with the data with a bunch of these sites here, I see that one of the problems to make the data open access seems to be the privatization or the anonymization of the data. And honestly, what maybe it starts with the consumption of metering, or the real data of consumption of the people of the community ends up being treated into a synthetic profile because there's not enough data, or because needs to be treated in a way that can be modeled or dealt with in order to create the energy scenarios that we end up studying. I'm wondering if this creation of synthetic profiles out of real measurements is a way of anonymization, if it could be considered a way of anonymization of the data.
I think I didn't understand your point, but indeed you are creating the data.
Yeah, you are recreating the data out of real measurements in the end, sometimes. Sometimes closer to the original one, but sometimes not, because you're, for example, I was talking with your colleague there on the right before, you're going to recreate a yearly profile out of 2 months, and then base that on an assumption of the standard profile of the whole year for example, a school or a hospital. Is that still linkable to a private source, or is it already a synthetic profile that it's anonymous?
I don't think so, but Thierry, do you want to?
I'm not sure. It's a fuzzy zone what you're telling here, and well, it goes back to what Javier says. There is money in that. Standard profiles can be sold afterwards. So that's the interesting part of it. But until now, in our experience, in our project we are doing, is that, let's say, synthesized profiles are not very sensitive to GDPR or whatever. It's in our experience, in our law and in Belgium. So I don't know if other people have other experiences. We didn't have that problem.
It's also a bit a problem of which metadata you need for the project, I assume. So that makes it also a bit more complicated with making it theoretical case. But I'll leave the floor to Javier.
Thank you. Yeah, just I wanted to mention regarding this part on synthetic data that indeed we can consider it as anonymized, a sort of anonymization. And for instance, in a new project, we are investigating this for predictive maintenance. You know that, for instance, predictive maintenance, it is very important for training algorithms to look for profiles in which you are directly measuring historical profiles, measuring an error, because that's the way you will be able to predict it in the future. And it is very rare to have this kind of data sets, because, you know, when errors occur, either you were not measuring, or if you are measuring, it can provide also some business critical information attached. And we are working on some synthetic data that are providing this kind of data sets able for service providers to develop. And I guess the question is, how well are you doing this synthesization or anonymization? But if you do it properly, you can consider those profiles as non-business critical, non-personal data, anonymized, whatever. So there is a way to do so. And also, linking to the comment from Thierry, I think there is a lot of business into data, and we can ask Google or Facebook or Instagram. So they are providing us for free application just based on our data. So it is just a matter of identifying what is interesting for our data owners, so we can provide it to them, and they will for sure leave us their data trustfully.
Yeah, maybe one comment extra to this discussion. We do collect data in the AIMNES project. I've contacted with a few of you here, and just only the anonymous data is not that interesting. So you need to have some context around it. So of course we can provide the anonymized series, but then you don't know if it's a household with 1 person or with 5 persons. So it becomes interesting when you do know more context about it, but then you enter the area with the privacy aspect. And when you do know more context about it, then also the value increases, especially for at least energy suppliers. Maybe if they do know your address and if you don't have solar, then they can give you a proposition for solar panels, for example. Or if you do have an interesting profile for a special contract, but you do need to have the personal information with that profile. So in some way, if you're providing anonymous data, you need to have some context to make interesting information of it.
That's about the sample size. The bigger the group is, the more you can anonymize.
Yeah, there was this idea of the synthesized series when you can combine certain households, like 1-person households, and then you sample all those series. I think then you not can pinpoint it to a particular person, but you do have a sample of a profile of a single person household, which is maybe not that granular anymore, but you do have a general profile for that. So,
if I can react with it, it depends on your case as well, because if you only have 3 ones, yeah. One single house.
Of course, you need a big group for that, but as long as you don't have the exact address, yeah, they don't know who it is. but there are sample size from grid operators where they say, okay, we do know per postal code what the consumption is, but when it's a sample size of 5, we don't provide it, because then you can pinpoint it to a certain address or certain addresses.
Okay, I think we can round up now. I think data is still a big thing and will still evolve, and let's see what the future brings with the data collection. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, we've known that this is one of the most important issues and problems actually we've been all facing. So it's been nice to start a conversation that will have to continue for a long time. There's no way we have a good solution, a suitable solution for all projects anytime soon. But, well, I suppose the European Commission will help us towards that. There are many initiatives ongoing to support, to help find solutions in the matter. But for now, thank you, and big thanks to everyone for being here for this. I know some of you traveled from away, but bringing together European projects, it's always about, I suppose. We can now go for a small lunch break, not a small one, apologies, for a normal, proper lunch break right next door. I think we can take 45 minutes, and we meet back here at 2. I think we have a very nice, I will not say Italian session, we have a very nice session afterwards, but it will be supported or moderated or has been organized a lot by many Italian people who have traveled here to be with us, and many, many thanks to all of them. So go enjoy your break and see you in 45 minutes here. Javier, thank you.
Thanks to you.